What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about something that a user brought up during or in one of my videos. This user has been pretty active for a couple of days now about expressing his opinions and possibly trying to get my opinions and views on some things. And this user, who I don't know if he wants me to mention his name or not, so again, I'm not going to mention his name, but he posted something that read, "You got to realize that the black community does not consider light-skinned and biracial men black. They consider light-skinned and biracial females black, but not the men." And he said that for the entire black community. And he used the initials BC for a black community. But I do think that is a interesting topic to explore. So let me get into it. All right. So, but before I really go into it, I just want to define a couple of terms. We got to make this separation because I know, like me, and as well as other people, we use the terms light skin to sometimes include people who are biracial, are mixed, first generational. But there is a difference, light skin versus mixed. All right. Let me explain the difference here. When it comes to light skinned people, light skinned black people in general, usually the mix, it's like a multi-generational mix. It kind of occurred like way back when, and it's like indirect mixing. It's not like you have two parents of different races. It's like you have one parent who's maybe part this, part that, but identifies as black, and then you may have a parent that is like more or less just black, or perhaps you may have two parents who are both light skinned. As well, you may have a parent who is mixed themselves but identifies as black and has had a child with another black person who is fully black. That could happen as well. So to me, that's more so light skinned, when the mix did not occur within the first generation. It occurred like at least a generation back. Multi-generational, right? It occurred generations backwards, or back. On the other hand, mixed and biracial, that occurs in the first generation where you have a black parent and a non-black parent. Both of the, like, one parent identifies as black and the other does not. That is first generational mix to me. And that's what it is. It's just not to me, but that's what it is. All right. So light-skinned people, to sum it up, light-skinned folks are multi-generational mixed. Biracial and mixed folks are first-generational mixed. All right. So let's get into it. Let's get into this. All right. So as far as light-skinned men go, as defined already, multi-generational mixed, are they black? Hell yeah. Like, duh. Of course, definitely. I don't think people really argue about, say, light-skinned people. Sometimes I think light-skinned people get caught in the crossfires, but I think a lot of times when people are trying to regulate blackness and say who's black and who's not black, it's usually directed towards like biracial and mixed people, not so much the light-skinned people. And as well, there have been light-skinned people, in the community who have done great things for the community, like Malcolm X, he was light-skinned. Huey P. Newton, he was light-skinned. Louis Farrakhan, light-skinned. And as well, a lot of others that, I could name, but they just don't come to mind at the moment. And when I think about it, I'm like, well, those guys, I don't think any person in the black community would question their blackness, or their claim to blackness. Like, they accept it, even though they may not be like the blackest looking black person. Folks accept it. Black people generally accept it. And if by chance there was a person who did not accept it, I feel like the backlash would be really strong. Like, imagine if some prominent person in the media, like let's say if, like, maybe Kanye West said that Malcolm X wasn't a black man, was not a black man. I'm pretty sure people would have a lot of things to say to Kanye about that. They would not be feeling that. The black community would not be feeling that. But let's use another example, just in case people may be saying, well, it's Kanye West. Of course not. Like, of course people are going to have some things to say to him. Let's see. We could use, let's see. We could use Samuel L. Jackson. We could use him, or like KRS-One. Random. Some kind of random, right? But yeah, just think about it though. If any of those people, or if anyone else said that Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, Louis Farrakhan weren't black, there would be some backlash over that. Some people would be going crazy over that. They wouldn't be feeling it. I just don't think so. And really, folks know better than to even question their blackness. And I think it's partially because of like their contribution to the community, and their commitment to the community, and them advocating for the community. And as well, like those three guys are probably the most militant black men, like on that level, like on a like a really like high level as far as like media exposure is concerned, like really prominent. Those are like the most prominent figures when it comes to militant black men, militant black people. And it sort of is kind of slightly ironic that they all are like light skinned. They're all light skinned men, and they seem like they're the most like militant, especially like Malcolm X. You know, he was definitely just calling it for what it was, going in, letting these white folks know what's up. And I guess, like, even, of course, like, Louis Farrakhan and Huey P. Newton, too, like, they go into, like, Huey P. Newton helped create the Black Panthers, and that is a very militant group, Like, they weren't on that whole, like, civil rights, we shall overcome, let's sing Negro spirituals. They were on, let's get some guns and defend ourselves against these racist KKK cops, But yeah, I do think that's a little ironic, though, when it comes to like our examples, even though, of course, there are militant dark-skinned people and dark-skinned men, of course. But as far as like being on a prominent level like that, yeah, it's, oddly enough, it's kind of like the lighter-skinned men on that level, versus say like not Malcolm, but Martin Luther King Jr., who wasn't considered to be very militant. As far as Marcus Garvey goes, I think he was like militant, but he wasn't like, he was more so like, let's just separate from them and do us. While I think more so Huey P. Newton, Lewis, and Malcolm were like that, but they also had a lot to say about white people, and as well, were not afraid to defend themselves against white people. All right, so To sum it up about light-skinned men, not to be confused with biracial and mixed men. To sum it up, of course they're black. Of course, I don't think anyone's going to be questioning their blackness. All right. But I think the question comes up when it comes to biracial and mixed men, and just biracial and mixed people in general, but a lot of times the men as well. I think it comes up partially when a user posted something on my page. A different YouTube user posted something on my page, and she posted this following comment: "The only time black men view biracial men as black is when there is something to gain from it, or if black men think a biracial man feels superior, then they will be quick to say, quote unquote, 'You're just as black as I am.' Or the famous line, 'White people will call you a nigger just like me.'" And I think when it comes to biracial and mixed men, I think there is sort of like, uh, in general, I think when it comes to light-skinned people, both biracial and just light-skinned folks, just in general, including multi-generational and first-generational, there's an air of suspicion that I think that's like dark-skinned people have towards lighter-skinned black people. I really think it's an air of suspicion that's not really touched on or talked about, but I think a lot of times darker-skinned black people look at lighter-skinned black people as suspicious. And I think that's because they may feel like they don't know which side of the fence they're on. They don't know if they consider themselves to be, black and down for black people, or perhaps they're on the whole biracial thing where it's like, well, I'm not going to choose a side, or either like, oh, well, my mom's white, so, I can't, go against white people, and I think that, while light-skinned people do have two black parents, I think, like, again, they get caught in the crossfire of that. So I think that's one reason why I think, people may question light-skinned or biracial and mixed men's blackness because they don't have two black parents, they have one black parent. Another reason is, as the YouTube user mentioned, like, I think it has something to do with like wanting to kind of like maybe maintain a sense of control and a sense of identity, because, please believe that dark-skinned men are not just going to let light-skinned and mixed men take their place. They're not going to do that, they're not going to just let that happen. They will let that happen to dark-skinned women in regards to light-skinned women taking their place. They'll let that happen, but they won't let that happen to them. And that is grimy. That is shady. And again, this is as a collective and as a whole. I know that all dark-skinned people and light-skinned people aren't like this, all right? But it's just something to think about, because this whole situation, like, colorism itself is like extremely nuanced, so many layers to this, layer after layer after layer after layer. It goes really deep, Yeah. Another reason, I think, is because maybe people may view biracial men and mixed men as somewhat maybe competition, and like, hey, like, why are we bringing in extra competition into this? Like, no, you're not a part of this. And I think for, darker skinned men, I think this is sort of a way to sort of exercise like power and authority by saying, no, you are not black, get out of here. It's like kind of like, again, like exercising power and authority over someone, as well as like claiming an identity and being exclusive with your identity. Sort of like, because black men have been so kind of like emasculated by oppression and racism, it's sort of like perhaps trying to gain back sort of that power and authority that may make dark-skinned men feel like they're in control and thus more masculine, and et cetera, et cetera. Remember when Jesse Williams and Colin Kaepernick were kind of like in the news for kind of like being a bit more militant. I think one reason that they like dark-skinned men may not want to accept biracial and mixed men as black is because they may feel like, well, I don't like, they may feel some type of way about them kind of like taking a position within the community that they feel like they should have. But then again, on the flip side, it's like, well, if you are not taking that position of, advocating for black people, being militant, whatever, then shouldn't someone take the position? Right? But again, the situation is very nuanced, but in regards to light-skinned and biracial women, light-skinned, biracial, and mixed women, I feel like they just have to show up. They just got to show up. And they don't even have to look good. They just have to show up. If they look good, then that is a bonus. They'll roll out the red carpet for them. Oh yeah, you can be black. You can be look how Tyrese was doing with his wife, and she don't even identify as black, but he called her his black queen and all that stuff. Then with Kendrick Lamar and his wife, or his fiance, I think. Folks, the battle cry is strong when it comes to defending biracial and light-skinned women's blackness. They come out in droves to defend them. Like, no. And I was like, really? Really? But of course, we all know what that's about. They want to be able to be with them without being considered sellouts. Right? And I feel like that's okay as long as you're just fair about it, and fair about it across the board. You can't accept the biracial or light-skinned, the biracial mixed or light-skinned woman, but not accept the biracial mixed or light-skinned man. Because I feel like I think that's a little grimy and a little shady. And it's just like you need to be equal about it, and fair about it, and equal about it. But as far as like dark-skinned women are concerned, I think some dark-skinned women, in regards to light-skinned women, they accept them as black sometimes, and sometimes they don't. I think when it comes to dark-skinned people in general, I think dark-skinned people may feel like sometimes, I think light-skinned and mixed and biracial people may have a certain amount of privilege that sort of that they have at the extent that they have privilege at the expense of dark-skinned people. So I think that might be where some animosity may come in to play, just in regards to just dark-skinned people versus light-skinned people in general. And dark-skinned people may be feeling like, well, that's not fair. Like, they have more privileges than we do, and why should we accept them, thus perhaps even contributing to our own erasure and disadvantage. But let me give you my personal experience and my personal opinion. Okay, so my personal experience as far as like people questioning, I guess, my blackness, overall, my life experience, I I don't I rarely think that a black person has ever just said that you're not black. Maybe like one time, a black person said, "I'm not black." That I'm not black. I am white. I don't know what he was smoking, but yeah. But other than that, no, I don't think. No, I can't remember any black person ever just point blank saying, you know, you're not black. You know, you don't belong here, etc. I That was never my personal experience. All right. And I grew up in a majority black neighborhood and went to a majority black school, majority black church, black family, etc. Black friends, etc. Right? No one ever questioned my blackness. My claim to blackness. However, I definitely have been asked about, like, what are you? That question, like, as far as like race is concerned, like, what are you? What do you consider yourself? Are you mixed? What are you mixed with? Questions like that, you know. And my response would be usually a few things, like basically, I'm black, I identify as black, I consider myself black. Um, Perhaps if I feel like going into my family's dynamic, I would say like, oh well, my dad is like my mom's brown skin, my dad is light skin, or perhaps my mom is brown skin and my dad is white passing but identifies as black, etc. Right, etc. um, and even after I actually answered the question, they really, overall, they just accepted the answer. I don't think anyone was ever like, oh, oh, no, I don't accept that answer. I don't think anyone was ever like that. I can't really think of that. It was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, you know, but I actually, as far as black people are concerned, no, really rarely has a black person ever just said I'm not black or questioned my blackness or anything like that. Um, Perhaps black people may have been more like, well, you're like black, but you're not like black black. Perhaps like it was like a layer, it was like levels to it, and you were like at level 3 while they were like at level 5 or 7. Something like that. you know. Um, the only times I ever been like really people were saying like, oh, I'm not black, it came from like people who weren't black. It came from like a person who was like white, and a person who was like perhaps Latino or Latinx, maybe. But as far as black people are concerned, and that's really who I need to be concerned about, if I'm being accepted by black people, because that's, well, what I consider home, what I consider my address. All right. So as far as my personal opinion about who's black and who's not black, I personally feel like light-skinned people definitely are black. Definitely. I don't think there should be a question about it. But on the other hand, I can understand if like the light-skinned person didn't look black. Like, for instance, like my dad, he doesn't really look like black. Um, you know, when my parents first met, my mom didn't think that he was black, and also when his girlfriend met him, that she didn't think that he was looked black either. My mom thought that he looked white, or not thought that he was white, and my dad's girlfriend thought that he was like Puerto Rican, because I think where she met him there was like a lot of like Puerto Ricans in the area. All right. So like I guess some like swarthy white person, perhaps Latinx, But the thing is, like with my dad, like both of his parents are black though. So that makes it even more complicated. So I can understand people maybe having some animosity towards that, perhaps. But I feel like when your blackness is visible and you're light skinned, I think it's a different situation. Um, but I feel like ultimately, if you're light skinned and you have two parents who identify as black, then I feel like ultimately you are black. And as well, like my dad came up during when the one drop era was in like total effect. So it wasn't like he really could say like claim a white identity because by law he wasn't allowed to. Plus, both of his parents identified as black, so that would be a bit strange to have two parents who are black have a white child, right? um, so when it comes to mixed and biracial people, I do consider mixed and biracial people to be black if it is a black person and if it's like a black person who is like, majority black and they have a child with a white person, or I guess a non-black person, I would consider the offspring to be black. But if it was like a mixed black person having a child with a white person or a non-black person, then I would be more skeptical about it. I would be more critical about it. I'm not sure, when it comes to that. But for me, if you have like a majority black parent, and a white person or a non-black person, I consider them to be black as well. That's my personal opinion. Um, and sometimes when these arguments come up about biracial and mixed people not being black, sometimes I do sort of, keep tabs on that argument and sort of think to myself, like, I don't think I can fully 100% agree with that because I feel like it could be directed towards like light-skinned people if I were to kind of like co-sign that, you know. But I usually when I do hear these arguments, it's actually they do specify like, oh, it's not directed towards light-skinned black people with two black parents. It's directed towards mixed people with one black parent and one non-black parent. I do hear that. People do make that specification. All right. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say for the time being. Thanks a lot for watching. I always seem to go on for a while with these videos. It is a lot to say though. It's like so many different things that could be said, you know. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.